Hey guys, so today I'm making a video for basically finding a job as a university student looking for a kind of a graduate scheme out there. So the reason why I'm making this video is because I've recently kind of been going through my own journey looking for a graduate scheme, and I've been very fortunate enough to find one recently. It's been a really big struggle, but I got there eventually. And it was really hard. So I'm kind of making this video today really to kind of share with you guys what I did, what worked, what didn't work, and kind of general advice. So a bit of context just about me and like who I am. So my name is Matt. I'm 23 years old. I've got a degree in business management, and I'm currently studying a master's in human resource management. Not the hardest degrees at all. Like, I talk to some people on campus and they're far more better educated than me, but generally speaking, like, these are quite like vocational degrees, right? And when it came to sort of preparing for kind of looking for jobs out there, it's pretty tricky because I find that universities aren't sometimes the greatest sources of information, and there's kind of a bit of a disconnect between what the universities are saying versus what actually is happening in the job market. It's pretty hard, the job market right now, just for context, like I'm sure you guys probably know. Basically, this video is just kind of talking about my experience. I've recently got a graduate scheme in HR. I won't say where just for the sake of privacy, but it's in quite a big firm in London. You've probably definitely heard of it, but I don't want to sort of sound braggy or anything, but that's kind of what I've got going on right now. I got that quite recently, and this video isn't really kind of like, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to kind of pretend like this is the only way in which you can do it, but it's just some kind of advice that I've kind of found along the way, which may help some of you guys out there. So this video is going to be split up into kind of three main parts. So we're going to have generic kind of CV advice, followed by kind of tracking job applications and, you know, what you should actually be looking for in job applications. And then finally, I think the most important part is talking about actual preparation for the interview. My experiences on that and kind of what helped kind of get me through the interviews in the end. So, you know, most jobs out there want a CV, but I feel like university sometimes doesn't really prepare us to kind of, you know, make a CV, or make a good CV at least. So we're kind of scouring the internet for videos and templates online. And sometimes obviously these are more for like generic jobs as opposed to graduate scheme roles. So I'm going to share in this video basically like my CV, and by all means this isn't like the perfect version. I'm sure there's other versions out there that are far better than mine, but it's just an example of what kind of worked for me and just some general guidance. And of course I'll link in the end of this video kind of a template to my CV, which you can kind of download and kind of edit on your own accord. So kicking things off, I think it's important to kind of start with your education on your CV. This is going to be like the bulk of like the initial kind of viewing of your CV, so it's super important that you get this right. It's obviously very important just to start off with the formal qualifications you're taking, so you know what the institution you're studying at, what the actual degree you're studying. And I think it's also really valuable to kind of put the actual modules in which you're kind of learning. You know, for instance, my degree, it was business management, and it's quite vague actually what that means. So by adding certain modules onto my CV, it gives a bit more flavor into what I actually studied, and not just like a generic, he studied business and I have no clue what that actually means. I think it's also quite nice to add certain information such as, you know, what previous societies you're a part of, you know, sports clubs, just to kind of give a bit of a bigger picture on who you are and that you actually have a life outside of studying. Some of my friends were kind of, when they were making their CVs, they were a bit unsure if they wanted to put their grade or not. I definitely would personally, this is just my own opinion, because I feel like from the perspective of like a recruiter, if you don't put your grade, they might assume the worst, like you might have got like a third or like just not a great mark. Obviously this is like to your own discretion, but in my opinion, I think it's worth being honest and just kind of declaring what you got as opposed to maybe concealing it away, but that's just my view. So obviously after education, we kind of have to add our work experience. Hopefully you have kind of work experience. I think any kind of work experience is definitely kind of valuable to have on a CV. I think it says a lot about you. So, you know, it might be part-time work, or it might have been a placement year. You know, when I was looking for my first job for a placement, I found it really difficult because I didn't really have much experience. I previously worked at Oxfam, which I really didn't enjoy, but that's another story. But it's really important to kind of have something to talk about in terms of job experience, and you can be really creative with it, I guess, where possible. It's kind of like the bread and butter to your CV. So if you don't have any kind of work experience on there, it may not look great, but any kind of experience whatsoever, if you don't have a placement, is definitely worth adding to your CV. I think if you don't have any work experience, you could definitely be creative with it and put other things such as, kind of university projects you've been working on, kind of extracurricular stuff, in your personal life. So long as it gives you something to talk about in terms of like demonstrates key qualities like teamwork or creativity or innovation or anything really. So assuming that you have some kind of work experience, I'd recommend starting off with like a bullet point kind of approach to things, keeping it really concise where possible. So kind of outlining what the situation was, what the actual task was, and what the sort of impact from your kind of contribution to that kind of situation was. I'm gonna be quite like firm here. Do not tell any lies on your CV at all, like ever. I'm being completely honest here. I once lied on my CV years ago for a job to try and get the job, obviously in an interview. And the interviewer asked me so many questions about that lie to kind of catch me out that it was like embarrassingly like awkward and terrible. I still cringe about it today, like it was that bad. So don't lie to try and make your CV look better. It's not worth the risk. I think like a really great substitute to maybe some work experience as graduates is talking about, our sort of achievements and personal development activities. So maybe you've taken a course recently, or maybe you achieved something really great at university that kind of demonstrates certain qualities about yourself. I think this is a great way to kind of substitute the experience that you may not actually have at this stage, because, going into it, I think a lot of us don't have an abundance of work experience. So this could be, I don't know, I was a team captain of a certain sport, or I don't know, I presented this thing to a bunch of people at university, or like anything that you can think of really, just to kind of like give more depth to your CV to demonstrate, really key qualities. There's also this like final section on like just interests you might have. Not really important, but I just add it anyway. I think I've only been asked about these like once in my entire time in interviews. But being completely honest, like it's just another thing to add to your CV, and it gives a bit more kind of character about yourself. So the second kind of part of this video is about kind of the job search process and kind of tracking how you're getting along with this. So in this description, I will link a document, like a template, onto how to actually kind of save jobs and what you should be looking for and saving down for yourself. So this is like just a very basic spreadsheet that kind of was really helpful for me, at least, to kind of keep track of what I was doing. I applied for so many jobs that like this was very helpful to kind of keep track of what I was exactly doing and the information about certain jobs and all of that kind of fun stuff. So a really basic rundown of the spreadsheet I created basically lists the firm, the job title, the location, the start date, the date you applied, the salary. Probably the most important one is the job description. I would highly recommend saving this to like a Google Drive or anything really, kind of having a reference of the job description. And also on the spreadsheet there's like a little tool that helps track the progress of your application. So you might have, I don't know, like you might be at the interview stage or like the game stage or stuff like that. It just kind of helps you keep on top of things, because you can kind of be overwhelmed with it sometimes. But the reason why you want the job description is really to understand, what the job is, obviously, and what the recruiter is looking for. A lot of the time, the job description kind of reveals how to actually frame your answers and frame your experience. So for instance, they might be looking for, I don't know, a leader, or someone who's creative, or someone who's great working with people. And when it comes to, doing an interview, they're going to probably be asking questions around those traits. So if you can prepare and kind of look at the job description, it gives you like a really great advantage over other applicants, actually understanding, what are they going to ask me, and how can I relate my own experiences to those kind of questions. I think the worst experience is when you're going into an interview and you don't know what to say to a question because you haven't really prepared. So that's really where like the job description being saved comes like really crucial. In terms of the actual job search tools I'd recommend using, I think LinkedIn is probably the best one, followed by Indeed. There's also this great website called Bright Network. It's kind of more specific for graduates. And then you also have your own university kind of career job search tool that your university should have, at least. I hope so. My genuine piece of advice for this is be prepared to be rejected a lot. I applied for over 60 jobs and I got rejected all the time, and I thought I was quite I don't want to sound like arrogant. I thought I was quite like competitive for certain jobs and I got rejected from the CV stage. I think also it's really important to be quite open-minded with the jobs you're looking for and try not to kind of be hyper specific on, you know, the jobs you would and wouldn't do. Obviously my experience is a little bit different because I'm a business, you know, degree student. So I kind of learned everything in business, like marketing, sales, all of that stuff, HR. Obviously if you've studied something really specific, I don't know, Elizabethan dance theory or something, then you might be more limited on what you can kind of branch out into. But I definitely wouldn't kind of filter out opportunities that might not be exactly what you want, but it's kind of, you know, a good scheme that you could kind of get onto anyway. You know, I'm doing a master's in HR. I've got a job in HR now, but I applied for more like general management schemes. Obviously I didn't really want them because I was studying in HR, right? So it's not really kind of worth my degree. But I think at the end of the day, like, it's so competitive that sometimes, you know, your preferred choice isn't necessarily going to be what you're going to get. So here's the final part of this video on interviews and how to actually prepare for the interview themselves. So this is probably going to be over, you know, Zoom, Teams, or actually in person. Being completely honest, I've never had one in person, which I think is quite great. But I think the advice still kind of applies regardless. I don't like interviews. I hate interviews. I don't think I'm very good at interviews. I find them really awkward. I don't really like talking about myself and kind of like trying to sell myself to someone. It feels kind of weird, like I'm a cattle or something sometimes. But it is what it is. We have to do them. So I would really stress the importance of preparing for these job interviews. You know, it's a super generic saying, but like, fail to prepare, prepare to fail, right? And when it comes to these interviews, they're really kind of trying to test kind of mainly two things about yourself from my experience: what you know about the company and what do they want to know about you. Failing to prepare on either of those is kind of like a death sentence in terms of your application. You know, if you're asked a question like a company and you have no clue like what the company is, what it stands for, the products they sell, it's probably not going to work out very well. So, like, speaking from past experience, I applied for a job at Johnson & Johnson. I was super excited. This is for my placement year. I knew nothing about Johnson & Johnson apart from they sell like some pharmaceutical products, I guess. I didn't really do any research beforehand. And one of the first questions I was asked in their interview was, so what is your favorite value from Johnson & Johnson? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I have no clue. I have not researched this at all. I think I gave some really silly answer about environmental values. I have no clue if that even is a value at Johnson & Johnson. Clear to say I didn't get the job. But that kind of represents my own kind of anecdote of why you need to prepare for these job interviews. But if there's one thing that they're going to ask you pretty much every time, it's going to be, why do you want to work at this business? Why this firm? Always go into an interview with knowing exactly what you're going to say. I'd also recommend looking on Glassdoor. It's a really great website which kind of reveals previous interview questions that have been asked by the organization, and you can search this by certain roles as well. So you can look up, I don't know, sales graduate role, and they'll have information on you, what has been asked in the past. Obviously don't like rely on that because they could ask you something completely different, but it gives you some kind of preparation on, you know, potential repeating questions. You know, there's a limit to how many things they can actually ask you at the end of the day, so it's definitely something that could be useful. I also have done this a couple of times where I actually email the interviewer before the interview, like a week before, and I'll just ask them, you know, what kind of interview is this going to be? Obviously it takes a bit more confidence to do that, but there's no harm in asking. Like, the worst case scenario is just going to say, oh, it's a surprise or something. Like, they're not going to, you know, withdraw the interview offer. So there's only so many things they're going to ask about the company. Like, they're trying to like test on your knowledge on what you actually know. This is not like an exhaustive list of things, but this is just things that I've experienced in the past, plus things, you know, I found on the internet and what, you know, could be asked. But yeah, do not take this as the only things they can ask about the company. So we have, you know, the organizational culture. So, you know, what values do they have? You know, professional development opportunities available for the company, the strategy the company is kind of involved with, the markets they're in, you know, certain countries they're investing in, you know, the business units, what products they sell, what services they provide, the competitors that they might be facing against right now, current news of this sort of firm slash industry. Sometimes they want to know, does this person know anything about the kind of current affairs that are going on, in politics or economics or social issues? This is really kind of a great way to kind of test your, contemporary knowledge on kind of the organization you're applying for. Recent achievements that the organization has kind of, got recently, stuff like that. Also, current challenges that the organization are facing. And they're not looking for like specific stuff on, exactly what they want you to say, but so long as you have information on the firm going into it, it's definitely valuable. So another thing they're going to ask you is, why this role that you're applying for? Why do you think you're suited for it? What interests you about the role? And what skills, knowledge, experience do you have that is kind of suitable for this? This is kind of linking into what the actual job description that you saved earlier it kind of plays handy for and valuable. By having the job description, you can kind of frame your answers around that, and you can kind of link it to the job description. So you could say, I don't know, I'm a great team player, and link it to kind of the job description. Don't obviously reference the job description, but you can kind of use it as a template to what you actually want to talk about. And yeah, be honest about your strengths and try and sound confident in how you're selling yourself. They also might ask you just a very quick question, tell me a bit about yourself. I don't like this question at all, but it's asked quite a lot. So keep it brief, keep it honest, and just kind of try and sound confident where possible. So mine's quite simple. I say, hi, my name's Matt. I studied my undergrad in business management at my university. I studied modules on this degree like psychology, data analysis, change management. I'm currently doing my master's in human resource management at the same university, and I'm learning about things like employment law, employment relations. I'm CIPD level 5 qualified, that's for HR. And I have 1.5 years of experience in HR within the tech industry. Quite simple. Don't sound boasting about it where possible, but try and sell yourself in a more like just normal way. So they also will ask you scenario-based questions. So a scenario-based question, I don't know if that's the technical term, but it's basically, it starts with, tell me about a time you've done this. So it will say like, I don't know, tell me about a time you've dealt with a task under pressure. Tell me about a time you had to prioritize multiple, things going on in the business. Tell me about a time you had to manage change. These are really important questions, and they're asked so many times that it's super important that you have, previous examples in your head ready to go and fire off. And they're really just trying to test, do you have the relevant experience from these scenarios which could be applied to work? They're quite simplistic in how they're asked, but it's really important that you have quite a good answer behind every question, and trying to avoid being really vague where possible. So this links into another document I'm sharing in this video, which basically lists all of the scenario kind of questions and topics that I have been asked previously, which you can prepare for. For context, this is for like business related jobs. So obviously if you're applying to be like, I don't know, a chemical engineer, it's probably going to be a little bit different, but I still think it's a great place to start. So this whole document lists off different scenarios that, I have been asked about and that I had prepared for. I've obviously removed kind of my answers because it doesn't really make sense for you to use them. But they're nonetheless still useful to get you into kind of, frame of mind of thinking, what kind of things and what kind of scenarios might I actually be asked? So in terms of how you actually structure these answers, it's thrown around quite a lot. This isn't new advice, but there's this acronym called STAR, which basically stands for situation, task, action, and result. And basically what this means is it frames your answer in this way, so it's kind of clear, what was going on, what kind of actions you took, and what was the outcome of your actions. My really important piece of advice was try to avoid referring to a team-based kind of situation slash task. I made this mistake earlier on, and it kind of resulted in a lot of feedback going on about how like you didn't really make it clear what your individual contribution was. You kind of just kept talking about the team, because obviously like at work we do work in teams quite a lot. So I think that's just like a really important thing, is try and keep it individual to yourself and be very specific on exactly what you delivered. Also like try and avoid repeating sort of same situations, but like different kind of examples that you're kind of showing. It's really bad in my opinion doing this, and it doesn't really help, because the interviewer is thinking, oh, for God's sake, he's talked about his sort of presentation or whatever like 50 times in this interview, and it shows that you might actually lack experience in some ways. So try and have a diverse set of, you know, experiences where possible. And also be prepared for follow-up questions in the interview. So they might ask you, you know, why did you do that? You know, how did you feel at the time? And they're trying to dig into, you know, exactly what your process of thinking was and, you know, more specific details. I think they're also trying to figure out if you've been lying in the answer. You know, I talked about previously, I had a bit of a few porkies here and there. So, you know, be prepared to go into this in good detail as well. They're really trying to probe exactly what you're saying and the detail around it to kind of get the best answer out of you, I guess. Also, you know, generic interview advice, just from my experience, kind of cringe some of these things, but I felt that it definitely helped. So for one, try and smile a lot in the interview. You don't want to kind of be like frowning or like, you know, feeling shitty the whole time in your interview. You want to, you know, come across as approachable and that, you know, you're glad to be there and you're having a good time. Don't come across like too much. So don't like be like hyper, you know, happy to be there, because people probably see through that. But, you know, try and have fun with it where possible. You probably won't have fun with it, but try your best at least. Wear formal attire, pretty obvious, but I think it's still important. If you're a guy, please wear a tie. I used to not wear ties, and my interviewer would be wearing a tie, and I think on reflection that was really stupid that I didn't wear a tie. I also wore like a proper, you know, blazer and, you know, white shirt. And you know, maybe try and avoid like anything too colorful as well. Like don't wear like I don't know, like a luminescent green shirt or something. You know, just try and keep it very professional looking where possible. And ultimately, it's better to look more professional in your attire than like too casual. So like don't show up with like a t-shirt and jeans, for instance. Like please don't do that. Try and stay energetic as well throughout the interview. So, you know, even if it is quite tiring and it can be quite a boring process sometimes, try and stay on top of it and, you know, have plenty of water beforehand. Ask the interviewer as well to clarify on certain questions. If you don't really understand what they're asking from you, don't go along with a question because you just want to get it over and done with as quick as possible. Like if you don't know what they're asking, ask them to clarify. They are trying to help facilitate the best answers out of you possible. Also kind of come in with like a couple interview questions for like the interviewers. A bit of like an Uno reverse card there. But try and come into the interview at the end with like a couple questions about, you know, the business, what they like about it, what kind of challenges they face. I think it's also really important at the end of an interview, like when you've had, you know, some time out, just to reflect on what went well and what didn't go so well. It can be quite hard sometimes. Like I had an interview for a construction company earlier this academic year, and it did not go very well. And it can be quite hard sometimes to, you know, reflect on these things and, you know, appreciate that maybe it didn't go so well. I'm quite harsh on myself as well sometimes, so it's probably not the best way of reflecting on things. But, you know, just link it all together and say like, you know, what did you do well? And, you know, what did you not do so well? And, you know, were there certain interview questions that were unexpected that came up? And, you know, on that document I've shared in this video, just be sure to add to the document over time, so you have more questions to refer to before you go into an interview. So, you know, when you are meeting someone in person, you have more answers in your head, and maybe, you know, you had an interview answer that didn't go so well. Reflect on that and try and figure out why. Or maybe you were kind of repeating some things, or, you know, using the same example over and over again. Not every interview is going to be perfect. I've never had a perfect interview, and, you know, the interview for the job I got, I didn't really feel like it went that well, in my opinion. But sometimes in life, you know, things don't go well, but in you're in your own mind even, and it actually turns out quite well. So, you know, try and learn from an experience, even if it can be tough sometimes. I think it's like a snowball. Over time, you kind of build up more and more experience, and the snowball grows bigger. And your first interview is probably going to be your worst one, but that's fine, and it's part of the process. So I hope you found this video like useful today. Obviously this is just from my own experience, and it's not like a conclusive guide on how to succeed at, you know, interviews and preparation and CVs and stuff like that. I really enjoyed talking about my experience, and, you know, enjoy being honest about it. And I think online sometimes it can be very fake, the whole process, and people can kind of be a bit dishonest about, their experiences and how they're the perfect candidate and everything. No one is the perfect candidate, and I feel like for grads we're definitely not the perfect candidate. It's very much like a marathon and not a sprint when it comes to job applications, and unfortunately the reality is it is a numbers game, and you will fail a lot and you will cringe a lot at your experiences, like I have a lot. But I know that, you know, people out there who are watching this video, if you work hard, you will get what you want. And, you know, it's important to kind of, you know, be kind to yourself throughout this, you know, whole process, and, you know, understand that rejection is part of the process. And I can't stress having a positive attitude going into this. It goes a long way. And, you know, I think sometimes you may not feel like you're actually the smartest person there, but they're not looking for the smartest person. They're looking for, you know, someone who's, you know, got a great attitude, that's, you know, keen to learn, that can get on with other people. So, you know, don't feel intimidated by someone who's gone to like Oxford or Cambridge or Imperial, and, you know, maybe you haven't gone to like an amazing university, or you've gone to an average university. There are amazing candidates out there that can stand out, you know, and I think, you know, overlook academic credentials, you know, believe in yourself, and you can definitely achieve what you want to achieve. And yeah, that's the end of the video.